Welcome to this Devtoberfest session on the last day of all of the tooling sessions. I want to welcome Sruthi and Florian to our session. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Daniel, you're excited to be here.
Great. In a few moments, we will hear from them about SAP Build Work Zone and specifically about guided procedures, probably one of the most interesting features in all of SAP Build. But first, a few brief notes. At the end of the day, please remember to fill out the validation tutorial for all of the sessions for today, so that you get credit for coming and get the points for the grand prize. I will leave a link to that tutorial in the description. Also, if you need additional points for the grand prize, consider doing all of the fun activities like the scavenger hunt, the puzzles, the coder challenges, even uploading a picture to Pettoberfest, either of your pet or any animal that you like. Links to all of those are also in the description, and there's plenty of time to do them. Also, feel free now during the session to add a comment in the live chat. In addition to questions, I'll be monitoring the chat, and I'll bring those questions to the attention of the presenters. So now I'll hand it over to Sruthi and Florian.
Shruthi, you want to go say a few words about yourself? Otherwise, I'll keep
perfect. Sure, will do. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shruthi. I'm part of the product management team of SAP Build Work Zone. And today here together with Florian, we would be taking you to a session through guided experiences using SAP Build Process Automation and SAP Build Work Zone. And we are excited to be handling this session. Over to you, Florian.
Awesome. Thank you, Shruthi. Also, good day, good morning from my side. Joining Shruthi here from the same team, also SAP Build Work Zone Product Management. And as Shruthi said, very excited to be here. Let me walk you through our session, the session agenda, what we have in store for you today. As Daniel said, I think it's a very exciting capability that in fact combines different artifacts and different elements of SAP Build in one holistic solution. So yeah, let's have a look at that. As the subject of the session sort of already indicates a bit, we will be also talking about some forward-looking information. So we will cover mostly what is here, what has been recently added. We'll show you the guided experience, most importantly, also in action using live demos. But we will also show some elements of forward-looking, meaning roadmap and future direction of the feature and the product. So please take note, as with all the other things that you've seen, you're familiar with this disclaimer. These, especially these forward-looking information, this may change, but yeah, so take that into account as usual. Speaking of the agenda and topics we want to cover, it's actually a rather packed agenda, so exciting topics in store for you. We're going to start with the bigger picture. How do guided experiences fit into SAP Build and the bigger picture of that? As Daniel said, it is a feature across SAP Build, not just one capability within the product suite. So how does that fit together? I will highlight that. We will then go more specifically into what are guided experiences, why do we offer them? So this is a bit of a shorter section to cover use cases, main motivation for introducing this capability in the first place. And then we'll go into more details of how guided experiences actually function. So how do you design, how do you craft these guided experiences? And this will be a combination of outline, let's say, the information architecture, the product capabilities themselves, and on the one hand side, and on the other hand side, also actually walking you through system demo, meaning working with guided experience in action in the real system. And last but not least, what I'll cover then is we'll basically look at, okay, most recently, what have we done, or maybe also compared to last year or last sessions you may have seen about guided experience. We've been busy at work, added a lot of additional exciting capabilities. So we want to highlight some of the things we've done more recently. And then towards the end, as with these other sessions, there will be plenty of time for some Q&A. And again, we'll look throughout the chat already, and then towards the end, we'll cover them. So with this out of the way, let me kick things off with, as I said, the big picture. And what we want to start off with is highlight, and this will be only the single slide I want to cover here in terms of SAP Build. But why am I bringing this up? this overall positioning of SAP Build? It is because guided experience are in a way a special capability. They are a capability that actually combines various features, as I said, from Build in one end-to-end experience. So as if you're attending the sessions, you will be well familiar with, we are with Build, we've evolved Build from formerly maybe a low-code or no-code offering only. We've then iterated, adding AI capabilities, adding other capabilities to it. Ultimately, most recently, landing at this truly unified solution offering of SAP Build with various capabilities under one commercial model. So this is where we are now, all AI infused, lots of pre-built content. And in general, Build consists of these different pillars or sets of capabilities, from developing extensions or UIs, automations, workflows, AI and skill for extending Joule, and then also with Workzone designing, engaging business sides or digital workspaces. And effectively, most of these capabilities across the different Build pillars will be then used or will come to play when creating guided experiences. So stay tuned for that. But I think it's an interesting bigger picture concept or consideration to say, well, in guided experience, you really experience all the different parts, from pre-built content to designing UIs to visualizing processes to ultimately bringing it all together to the end user. You feel all of these different dimensions in one feature at the end of the day. And that's quite powerful and exciting, as Daniel also said. So to double down on this, what we will focus on in today's session will be less on developing UI cards or developing individual UI elements that you can then place in guided experiences. There were other sessions around it, like general UI and application development already. So what we will focus on predominantly today are the two other parts of guided experience that will be, on the one hand side, utilizing process automation to model a process. More details to that in just a second. So that is one pillar. And the other pillar we're going to then use is taking, let's say, these UI artifacts, the underlying process skeleton, the process backbone, and then visualizing all of this for end users at the end of the day. Using Workzone. So here you can see the bigger picture. Guided experience really helps the different features from Build end to end come to life to the end user, which is what we're all here for at the end of the day. So I've now mentioned guided experience a fair amount of time. Probably there are many of you who have some connection, some history to guided experience, but just to set the stage so that everyone is on the same level and understanding what are really guided experiences, I want to explain that briefly before going into the functional details of how they actually work and how they're constructed more detailedly using the features I've just highlighted. So in a nutshell, what are guided experiences? What are they for? And why have we introduced them? Or what's the journey with guided experience been so far? In a nutshell, a problem that we've observed across our customer base is basically the one that is depicted on this slide. And that is a challenge of inefficiency and rather frustrating fragmented user experiences. What we have observed, and that actually applies to internal and external users alike, meaning this can easily apply to a new joiner, to a regular employee, but it can also apply to a channel partner, a supplier, a dealer that's interacting with you. And ultimately, what we often see is that these kind of users across different scenarios and business processes want to go through certain activities. A very prominent example could be something like, I want to, for instance, onboard to a new role. I'm changing positions in a company, and this is basically for me my process that I want to go through. Or I'm a supplier. I want to start working with a certain company, and I have to go through different steps and activities to actually be, let's say, formally certified and approved supplier for this company I want to work with. And from a business perspective, what we see here at the top of the screen, that is what I would perceive or should perceive as a single user journey, right? I want to change my position. I want to change to this new role. This should feel like a consistent end-to-end experience. Basically, moving to the bottom half of the slide, reality often is different. That is, it's a rather fragmented, disconnected experience where I then have to do individual steps and interact with different functional areas, or as we say here, functional service centers in an organization on the one hand side. And from an IT and system landscape perspective, that also often means interacting with fragmented and disconnected systems. So I have to enter some data on one hand side, then re-enter other data on another side, jump between systems, copy data over. Bottom line, it does not at all feel like one consistent user journey, but it should, for me, that's what it should be like. And in reality, it's a lot of jumping back and forth, moving across systems, and it's all but unified and all but seamless for me as a user. So this is a problem space we're encountering, and this is exactly what we're here and what we're offering to solve. Very concretely speaking, what are guided experiences then, and maybe also emphasizing a bit what they're not. In a nutshell, they are a capability, a set of features in build that allow you to, on the one hand side, make use of pre-created, meaning SAP delivered guided experiences, but most importantly, as is in the nature of SAP Build, you're able to then create these guided experiences either using templates or from scratch for yourself. So this is the main objective. Guided experience at the end is a set of features in SAP Build, combining different capabilities across Build, from code, automation, work zone, etc., to create these guided experiences. In a nutshell, they combine different capabilities, as I said, most notably, and I'll walk you through the capability building blocks in just a second, they combine a process, meaning a workflow kind of dimension, and they combine a UI dimension that helps actually the user interact with this. What is important to emphasize is that in the very beginning, or by now a few years back, we already started with a concept called guided experience. But the problem with this concept was that it was very code heavy. So it meant in order to develop something that you see on the right-hand side, while you could achieve this visually speaking, it was a lot of coding and very complex to create and certainly to maintain or expand. And the beauty of this guided experience concept is that, or what we wanted to solve is, how can we make this much easier and the entry barrier much lower so that it does not necessarily need sort of developers or very IT savvy people to create this, but how can we empower the people who are experts in the actual underlying journey in the business process to craft these end to end in a very easy way and then roll out to their users. And again, it's a true end-to-end build capability. I want to highlight here what we focus on are most typically more complex cross-system processes, meaning if there's an existing dedicated process in a given, let's say, SAP product that already does one specific step end to end, the objective of guided experience is not to recreate what is already there. It's rather to solve this multi-system, multi-step, complex journey that a user would otherwise perceive as rather fragmented. So that is very important. We're not here to recreate an existing standard business process for which this is already fully covered in the standard product. That's not really the objective. And also we want to highlight, it's not, let's say, necessarily so much intended for in-product guidance, right? This is a more, you take data from different systems, surface it, and ask the user to, for instance, provide input across systems, but it's not necessarily the tool where you now get guided throughout one specific product, like how to use product X, Y, or Z, SuccessFactors Concur. That's more the objective of WalkMe as the in-product guidance. So just to make this also clear, this is not the main intention of guided experiences. So hopefully now the motivation for guided experiences on a high level, you've already seen a first screenshot of how it can look like, is somewhat clear. Let's basically look now under the hood. And then after this, I would hand over also to Sruthi to show you the guided experience truly in action. But let's first look under the hood. How does it look like from an architectural, architectural perspective? What are the actual building blocks that make up this guided experience so that you end up achieving what you see on this very slide, which is a guided experience, wizard layout, interactive experience for the end user. So what is it that you need to actually get there? In other words, how do you model, how do you design exactly these guided experiences? So to sort of demystify or deconstruct this a bit, there are predominantly three main dimensions, as I've highlighted in the very beginning of guided experiences, all capabilities from the SAP Build portfolio. First and foremost, the actual user interface, meaning what you've seen on the previous slide, where does the user actually interact, the end user interact with this guided experience? That is something we solve in WorkZone using the so-called wizard layout. Again, more details to that also in just a bit and in the demo. In this wizard layout, which is this interactive step-by-step wizard-like experience, as the name suggests, you are able to actually have this underlying, the skeleton, the structure, and also the actual different interfaces where you say, I want to, for instance, create different custom apps or UI cards, or also out-of-the-box widgets that Workzone provides to show a rotating banner, rich text, or other information. You want to basically visualize this in Workzone. But this is predominantly the UI, meaning the user interface layer. What this does not cover is basically the underlying logic that say, okay, I want a certain condition to be met for the user to move from step A to step B. That is not something that is part of the wizard layout. It's truly the layout, the visualization. And to basically cover this ability to say, well, how can the underlying process be structured? How can certain conditions be checked? How can I then integrate with additional backend systems to, for instance, retrieve the hire date before checking then, can I move to the next step? As an example, this is where then the integration and the connection with the process automation dimension comes to the table, which actually also serves other purposes like actual visibility or administrator monitoring of how the process is going. But in a nutshell, what happens in addition or under the hood of this wizard layout, you're actually crafting something called a guided process. So this is an artifact that is developed in process automation that actually gives or provides the structuring elements of what we call stages and steps, or think about a step and sub-step. That's basically the idea. And this is the underlying process skeleton that is then deployed to Workzone under the hood and is the foundation for what is then visualized in the wizard layout. This will all come to life in the demo in just a bit, but this is from an architectural system anatomy perspective, how you want to understand guided experience. In terms of personas, maybe just to highlight this as a last piece, I've highlighted and emphasized that one of the core objectives that we had with guided experience is we wanted to make it easy for ultimately the end users, the business users to craft this. And we are basically empowering these different personas to do exactly this. Unlike the initial guided experience phase, which was very code heavy, you had to essentially build a UI5 application to build one guided experience. Now it's basically pre-crafted, pre-built capabilities they can just easily wire together via a pre-built integration. So as you would expect, right, build is one holistic solution portfolio. And with this, you have a pre-built integration, nothing you need to do custom of building the process, deploying it, consuming it in Workzone. This is all pre-built, delivered by SAP as part of a build solution portfolio, nothing you need to do custom. And that, in that sense, ultimately, it becomes easier for individuals, business users, key users, and others to craft and make use of this guided experience capability. To make, sort of to prepare for the demo, let me walk you through on a high level what you're about to see, or what are different capabilities you're about to see. And again, it's those three dimensions. First Workzone, guided process, and then coming in, bringing this to life end to end. So first things first, you're creating the wizard layout. And I want to emphasize here, and not to take away all from the demo, you are able to actually create a guided experience with and without process automation. So for something lightweight, where you say, I don't need any advanced logic or monitoring capabilities, I just want to visualize certain steps that maybe users would otherwise see as a flat list of widgets in a Workzone work page. I want to visualize this more as this wizard layout without any further integration with process automation. That is possible. And basically, the wizard layout is part of the work page building capability. It's just one of the layout options per section that you get to choose. And then you can model this wizard layout. And if we don't integrate with process automation, basically here the structure needs to be crafted manually. You can see this at the bottom hand part of the slide, or of the screenshot rather, on the right. You have to type in basically the different titles for the different sections and steps. But ultimately, you have to model, and you model all of this in Workzone only. No integration with process automation. If you instead say, okay, well, I have a more complex, maybe more advanced use case. For instance, I want to have conditions in between the different stages or steps, want to check data from a backend, etc. So all the powerful, nice capabilities that process automation will bring to the table automatically. Then what you would do instead, you would actually first model a so-called guided process. Again, also that you'll see in a second, and make use of the guided process to structure the guided experience first. And design potentially conditions or parallel steps or stages that you want users to execute, as you can see also depicted briefly on the right-hand side. Last but not least, if you bring those two together, again, I've mentioned this end-to-end integration being out of the box. So what you do is you basically then, after having deployed the guided process that you've modeled in process automation, you would in fact consume it in WorkZone. And rather than what you've seen in the previous screenshot where you would model this manually in WorkZone, now the underlying process predetermines or pre-designs the guided experience wizard layout automatically. There's no need and also no way for you to now manually modify the actual structure of the guided process or the guided experience in WorkZone anymore. This is now fully determined by the guided experience, or concretely speaking, by the guided process in process automation. And I would now hand over to Sruthi to show you this also in action, rather than just a boring, but hopefully still insightful slideshow. And before I then, towards the end of the session, walk you through what is it that we've done more recently in terms of new features that I think make the guided experience capability even more exciting. So with this, Sruthi, over to you to take it away and show guided experience in action. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Florian. So thanks a lot for the great overview. So now I would switch my screen and take you to the live system. And yeah, hopefully you can see the screen. So
Yes.
as said by Florian and as described by him or about the overall capabilities of guided experience, what I would be demonstrating today is how do we have the possibility to model a guided experience using SAP Build Process Automation. And then once we deploy the process, there's a tight handshake that happens between process automation and WorkZone, through which you would be able to see all the steps and stages that's modeled as a skeleton within process automation to be readily consumed in a wizard layout within WorkZone. So what you see here right now is the build lobby, and I have now created a blank project, process automation project here. And once it loads in, I would then show you how to create a guided process. So just to give you a bit of background about the use case that we would be working upon and what I would be showing end to end. So the use case is called as the employee onboarding use case, meaning how a new employee who's been hired into a company would need to, they would have the requirement to upload certain documents before they join the company, and then they would have to go through various steps and stages after joining the company. So this is exactly what we are going to model here, how the entire process of onboarding a new employee into a company would look like using guided experiences. So yeah, so right within the process automation screen, when you go under the Create tab, you would see a new artifact that's available other than the standard artifact creation capabilities of process automation. So the rest of the artifacts were already available in process automation, and the newer capability is the guided process. So guided process is an exclusively new artifact that provides you the capability to build a guided experience, so to say. So let's go ahead and create onboarding 2025. Okay. All right. And this is how a blank skeleton, or so to say, the blank guided process that we create within the process automation looks like. So what you can do is that there are different options available here. There's a by default stage, and there's an option to add in steps. So let's say we call the stage as before the day of joining. And then, so once we have, say this is the stage 1, and under this stage, you would need to add multiple steps. So what you have available as of today is WorkZone as a widget. Florian will also later give you an overview onto what we would have in our future roadmap items. We would have additional option to create widgets using process automation and build apps. But yeah, this is what we have today. And let's say the first step that we would need to achieve before joining up the company would be add documentation and maybe a couple of other example to manager. And as you can see, there's so here in guided experience, we have the possibility to either create parallel or sequential steps and stages. And as you can see here, you have an option to add in a different stage, a sub-process, or a controls or control and other events. So if you want to create an if condition, if there's a certain equipment order that you need to place, and in an equipment order, there would be certain conditions that we would need to follow through for the order to go through. There are various possibilities that we can model within process automation. And for interest for time, let's add in a second stage. Say it's called as the day of joining. And here we would say in a step team. Okay. So yeah, basically this is how you can create a skeleton within process automation. You can make the process as much as more enhanced or complicated according to your use case, business use case. And one thing that you would need to note here is that guided experience works only with WorkZone Advanced Edition and SuccessFactors WorkZone. So what I would be demonstrating today is how this would then work, it would be deployed into WorkZone Advanced Edition. And another key point to note is that once we are done with the modeling and we release and deploy the project, the deployment only happens into a private environment. So that's another disclaimer that I wanted to make, that all the deployments for guided experience would need you to create a private environment, and it cannot be deployed into a public environment, so to say. So let's deploy it. Right, it's an error. Let's try deploying it into another test environment. Okay, there seems to be an issue. Let's now go back to the lobby and try to create a new test environment. Okay. So let's create a new private environment. All right. Now let's go back to our try to deploy it. All right, no problem. There seems to be an issue. So let's try deleting this artifact and creating it once again. Let's see. So such issues happen while live demos. but let's. Okay. All right, let's try to quickly create another guided process. All right. Let's quickly add in joining. Add documentation. The manager. Let's create one more stage. Set. Joining. And then another widget. We'll meet the team. Let's see if this works. Okay. I did not save it, sorry. Let's go ahead and release the project and see. Okay. Okay, there seems to be some issue with the environment, unfortunately, but no worries. We have an end-to-end demo that is already prepared. So just continuing with what would ideally happen in this situation. So once we deploy the project, it should ideally, we would then need to go back to our WorkZone Advanced Edition. And here we have already created a workspace called DevOktoberfest 2025. And what you would want to do here is go to the edit session. And once you go under the add section area, you would be able to have, you would be able to see the add visit pop up. And here you would have the possibility to select the process which you have just modeled here. So ideally, so the first environment that we deployed it into was the test environment. So ideally, you should be able to see the modeled process within this environment. But unfortunately, due to some landscape issues, it's not working. But just to give you experience of how it would look like, I will show you an existing deployed guided process that we have available here. So here's the employee onboarding process that's already available within the private environment. And here, as you can see, all the steps and stages that were modeled within process automation would be able, you would have it readily available to consume in a wizard layout right here. And yeah, so then you can easily just basically consume the process and start enhancing your guided process. So once the guided process is added, this is how the different steps and stages that you added in would look like within the wizard layout. And then you can go ahead and enhance your wizard using different tiles, cards, and other artifacts that is available within WorkZone. Now I wanted to show you the end-to-end of how this would look to you once it is delivered as when the use case is productized, and how you can use it for your internal use cases. Say you have now developed the guided experience using process automation and build work zone, and you have done all the modeling in process automation and added in and enhanced the wizard using all the artifacts that are available in build work zone. And once you have it published, you would have what you called as an end-to-end, which you can then use within your LOB, or you can productize it as and how. So what we have here is an end-to-end that we have deployed, and here, as you can see, that once the guided process is published, you would see a start button, and through this you can then navigate through different steps and stages that are available. So here you can see that before the day of joining, there are certain steps that you need to follow. There's a personal details, compliance forms, getting started, your learning, and then finally done. And here you would also have a possibility to model within model your guided process in a way that you cannot move to a next step before completing specific mandatory steps. For example, here you can see that the get started guide is complete. It's a mandatory section that you need to complete. So if I try to move to the next section, you would get a pop-up that you cannot move ahead without completing this area. So you would need to complete this step in order to move to the next session. And this is how you can then navigate through your different stages. And here you can see you have completed the stage before joining of your company. And then you are then navigated into your next session, wherein you can go ahead and complete your other onboarding activities related to joining of the company, and then so on and so forth. So yes, this is how exactly we model a guided experience using process automation and build work zone. And this is the short demo that I wanted to showcase to you. Unfortunately, the landscape in process automation broke, but I hope you could get an overarching idea of how you could potentially model your process and how you could use it for your own internal use cases. And also publish it as a template that can then be reused by others to create their own journeys using guided experience. And with that, now I hand over to you, Florian.
Thanks a lot. Let me take over the screen share again and walk you through some of the parts. In fact, you have not, you may have seen or may have observed in the demo, others you may have not seen. So I want to highlight some of the things that will come in very handy when working with these guided experiences, as just seen in the end-to-end demo. So first things first, we are and have delivered features for the different dimensions of guided experience, from both the administrator operating perspective, from a, let's say, use case and design perspective, and certainly also from a getting started, ease of use, quick start perspective, concretely speaking, in terms of pre-built content. And we've done changes or delivered enhancements and innovation for all of those buckets. So I want to walk you through some highlights. The first one you've already briefly seen when I accidentally moved the slide. So let's move at it for real this time. So what you are now able to do, and this was a much requested feature the moment we started introducing this, is you can now actually use the same and familiar monitoring capabilities you have for process automation. And you're familiar with this, or you may be familiar with this, for processes and workflows in general. You can now make use of them for guided processes as well. You can see on the screenshot on the slide here, there's a dedicated tab for guided processes, and you can now basically monitor the different running guided process instances. So in very concrete terms, how does that happen? So what Shruti has shown you in the demo is you're actually defining and deploying the guided process definition. This is what you deploy to WorkZone. This then gets used as the underlying process skeleton for a guided experience wizard layout. And then for each user that basically starts a guided process, and this is very similar to a regular process in guided experience, in process automation, excuse me, a dedicated so-called guided process instance is created, meaning one user starts a guided experience and another one starts the same guided experience. These are technically then speaking two guided process instances for the same process definition. And that's exactly what you're able to monitor now to understand how many users are going through guided experiences of a certain scenario at this very instance. And this will be, of course, very handy to understand, well, how is the guided experience used? How many users are currently in which level of the onboarding, for example, of the IT purchasing or whatever the use case may be. This is very helpful to actually monitor how it gets used across the product and in general foresee or see adoption. What you've now already seen or heard maybe briefly in my quick summary is that the notion is that a user would start a guided experience, and depending on the use case, the guided experience may in fact not be something that you do once and then be good with it. Typically, onboarding to a new role, you typically don't do this multiple times in parallel, ideally. And certainly also onboarding, you onboard and then you're onboarded. But there are many other use cases, such as planning events, purchasing or procuring topics. Just to give you two examples, and there's many others that are in fact not at all focused on one-time execution, but in fact offer or should offer multiple executions, either after another or even in parallel to another. And very happy to share that both of these are in fact possible meanwhile. So you can see this depicted on the slide, where users can not only, as it was possible initially, basically iterate or start one guided experience, finish it, and then that's the end of the guided experience. What is now possible, and that's an optional setting, more to settings in just a second, but you as the page administrator, as the administrator of the guided experience, can make the choice to enable this guided experience, what we call repeated or multi-instance support. You can toggle this on or off. And in a nutshell, what this does, it gives the users the ability to either, after completing a guided experience, restart it. Then it's still one guided experience at a time, but they can do it multiple times after another. Or depending on the use case, let's say IT purchasing, there it does not make sense that you're only able to order a laptop and only after the laptop has been shipped, you can order a monitor. It would make more sense that you're able to order a phone, a monitor, a keyboard, and maybe something else all in parallel to another via potentially separate processes, because it requires different thresholds, approval levels, etc. In other words, this would allow creating multiple guided experiences, in that terminology, multiple instances of that very guided experience for that very user in parallel to another. And you can then see this also depicted here. This is then visualized also very nicely in the guided experience in the wizard layout in WorkZone, that there are multiple of these instances available. And you can also see in the screenshot on the right-hand side at the bottom, there's abilities to then cancel an instance or an iteration or restart also one very specific iteration of a guided experience while running others. So I think very powerful, really expands the possible use cases of guided experiences, which were initially more focused on larger one-time executions, to now really serve a broader range of use cases that allow users to repeat or even run several iterations at the same time. Next to visualizing this also here, and you can still see it's rather space consuming, and this is feedback we've heard loud and clear, and actually a lot from different customers, different interviews, different research we've conducted. So guided experiences were perceived already as very valuable and very nice, visually speaking, when the users are actually able and required to see it. But at the same time, what this meant is that the guided experience take up a lot of the screen real estate, and this may not always be desired. What we've done, we've also offered, we've basically introduced a solution for that exactly, which I'm also very happy to share. we've introduced basically a new mechanism to minify a guided experience so that you can still see the guided experience and the progress bar, at least in a minified version, but it does not take up nearly as much screen space in context of other content shown on the very same work page. So this is now something that we have offered, this minified or collapsible section. And because this feature is actually relevant for guided experience and also outside of guided experience, this is a feature we've broadly made available now to all sections in WorkZone, in the WorkZone Advanced Work Page Editor, basically. And with this, or in order to support this, we've basically now split, this was previously merged, we've split the section settings for all workspace or work page sections. So like background color, full width background, padding, and all these different things. They are in one dedicated section. It's the little gear wheel icon. That's all the section settings, including collapsible or not. And separate from that is the guided experience configuration, the little chevrons. They are basically the settings specific for guided experiences, assuming a guided experience exists in that section. And with this, you have this minified version, and you've seen it. This applies to all the different iterations, be it single instance, multiple instances, a completed guided experience, something that is in progress. You will then basically have an easy way to still see how far along you are in the guided experience without it taking up half of the screen on a regular, smaller laptop size. Last but not least, you've seen Shruti start crafting a guided experience, crafting a process, crafting such a wizard. But of course, there are different scenarios where we have a lot of LOB expertise, and it would be great if you could just start not from scratch, but use our expertise and pre-built content readily available for you. And for that, also happy to highlight that we have, across different use cases, pre-built content available for you to get started. This actually applies both to wizard layout and workzone layouts with UI cards and other elements in general. On the left-hand side, you can see that. And also dedicated guided process and related actions from the build lobby store for process automation. So across both parts of this product integration, you have pre-built content available and that you can make use of, either use as is or use as a template and modify it further according to your needs. But again, this dramatically makes or helps you get started much more quickly compared to having to model and design and think of all these steps yourself. Then again, we typically see that there are certain elements in a process that are customer specific. So this is typically used not 100% as is, but rather it's used as a quick start template, and then smaller changes are made, and then it's deployed for your own version. But again, that's the beauty of it. That is possible, and it's very easy, and it's much, much faster than having to craft all of this from scratch.
Florian, sorry to interrupt. Screen sharing.
Sorry?
Probably you lost your screen sharing.
Still says it's sharing for me. I'll reshare. Thanks for raising. I'm not sure when it stopped. Otherwise, I'll bring up the other slides again. But is my screen visible again?
Yes, it is visible now.
Okay, thank you. Was it visible for the rest of the slides, or should I move back to the other slides briefly?
Maybe a slide before as well.
Okay, sure. So here is the collapsible section in minified version that I've praised so much. Now you can, if you didn't see it, now you can actually see what I highlighted to be so visually pleasing and helpful. So in case you didn't see it, that's what it is. With this, actually, we're in fact at the end of the latest innovation. So obviously, you've seen in other slides, we're looking towards additional enhancements and innovations. But this is the latest and greatest where we are of guided experiences, what they're here for, why we're doing what we're doing with guided experiences. And hopefully you're more motivated than ever, if you're not using them already, to start using them and make use of either pre-built content or using them also for your other scenarios. With this, we should have, plenty of time, roughly 10 minutes for Q&A. So with this, I'll hand over to Daniel to sort of lead us into the Q&A part.
Sure. I don't see too many questions in the chat, but I have a lot of little questions. I hope you won't mind.
Go for it.
So the first question you answered, which is that we use the guided procedures in Work Zone Advanced.
Mhm.
That's true. Okay. Do I have to do any special setup once I've installed Work Zone Advanced, just the regular Work Zone Advanced and Process Automation, I assume on the same tenant? Is there any other setup I have to do that they communicate with each other?
That's a great question. So to double down on this, yes. So this feature applies exclusively to the Advanced Edition and to SuccessFactors Workzone. For the integration to work, predominantly there's not really anything you need to do in addition. This is a pre-built server-server integration that we handle, assuming you run the booster between the different products. So it requires a service instance, destination, but these are typically pre-created or automatically created when using the booster. If that's the case, you're basically good to go. The only thing you need to do that's not there by default, you need to create a dedicated environment in SAP Build, because the guided experience capability, concretely the guided process, does not work with the public environment. So it has to work only in the dedicated shared environment that you have to create, grant permission. So leave discounting for that. The integration is really out of the box behind the scenes. That makes it quite beautiful. And this is also true for the SuccessFactors content. It's not there by default. It's available in the store. You have to install it, of course, but you don't need to go through a lengthy implementation process just to get the content up and running. Yeah. So.
Okay. I have more questions, but there's another question. Deployment to production. How is this done? And how is proper documentation handled?
So deployment to production. So maybe just to highlight in general in terms of the life cycle. So similarly to other parts of the portfolio, we typically observe that customers run multiple landscape tiers of process automation, work zone, and let's say a development, a test, and a production landscape. And similarly to other artifacts, you would be able to transport the content in between the different landscapes. So it depends a bit on how your life cycle is foreseen. Do you develop something in development and then deploy from there to production, or do you have development or like building tools like process automation available in production as well, and model it there and only there? So I think it's a bit of a preference of your landscape and your deployment, but in principle it follows the same concepts of transport, life cycle, release, deploy that you are familiar with from other parts of SAP Build and Workzone. Yeah.
Okay. When you were in Work Zone and you said add wizard, that means guided procedures.
Right. So add wizard is basically the layout part, the visualization in Work Zone itself. That's what you do from a visual perspective. And in this add wizard step, you then have two choices. Either it's Work Zone only, then it remains a wizard. We still call this a guided experience, but technically the feature is called wizard layout. Or alternatively, you have a wizard layout that connects to a guided process. That makes this then an integrated guided experience. But in both cases, yes, the wizard layout is the layout feature that is used for the guided experience end-to-end feature.
Okay. And you mentioned that when we're using a guided process, we do all of the configuration of that guided procedure within the process. So if I wanted to change the strings or anything, because you said I couldn't change anything really in Work Zone. So if I wanted to change something, I would go back to process automation, create a new version, deploy it, and it would be updated.
Short answer, yes. So maybe a little more sort of deconstructing the answer. So in terms of the underlying process skeleton, the structure, the names of the steps, stages, spot on, exactly. You deploy it in process automation, and if you want to make changes to it, you deploy a new version, release, etc., as you know the usual lifecycle in process automation. In either case, though, what you still do in Workzone is you use the actual Workzone page building to actually craft the layout. Meaning, if you're adding a UI card to show sales orders or onboarding steps, learning items, so the actual content is done in Workzone one or the other way. Process automation in that context is really used as the process backbone, the skeleton where all the logic happens or is executed behind the different steps. The actual visualization, the layout, is done in Workzone one way or the other. So it's basically both tools that play a role one way or the other.
Okay. Just to go over that, what do I do? Which parts would I do in Work Zone in that case?
So in Workzone itself, you would first and foremost add the wizard layout itself to have this visualized to the end user in the first place. and select the template. And then what you do for each step, so again, as a reminder, you have stages and steps, or steps and sub-steps. The actual step is, each step has an interface or has a UI. And what you would do in Workzone is you actually determine what content, what widgets should you actually, do you want to see on the UI? That is the step itself. So do you want to see a form? Do you want to see a list of my sales orders, or just plain text or a video or whatever else? That's all you do.
Okay. So I noticed that I can add a sub-process, right? I was able to, I forgot what the choices were, but one of them was a sub-process. So does the guided procedure stop until that sub-process is completed?
So Shruti, if you want to chime in as well, I think it depends a bit on how you model it. If you have parallel steps or not. But yeah, it doesn't really stop as such in terms of the actual process gets stopped. It's rather, you say, this is a condition that you have. For instance, you want to retrieve the hire date using a sub-process. And then until that condition is met, that you would retrieve, or the data you would retrieve from the sub-process, until that is met, the user will not be able to proceed. But the guided process as the overarching process will remain in place and active, right? The user will still be in that process state, and it will be sort of in a waiting position if you want to say. I'm not sure if you want to add anything. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry. Just wanted to add to what Florian mentioned, that the guided process as such would be executed, but until and unless what you have configured within the sub-process is achieved. For example, we had a real scenario with SuccessFactors wherein the employee should not be allowed to go to the next step without the hiring date coming through. And until the date is come through, the guided process that you see within the work zone would be in a halt state, meaning you would be only in the before the joint stage within what you see within work zone.
Okay, and the last question, I promise, is how do I get that information? By adding a sub-process, or are there other ways to get that information back?
Sub-process is one of the ways you can do that. You can also add an if condition and other business rules that are available within process automation. So when you click on the add a stage option, you could see multiple option, add a stage, sub-process, if condition, and you can also use the if condition to add in other business decisions that you would want to add in.
Okay, those are all my questions. I don't think there are any other questions. Anything you want to say before we go?
I think this was great. Thanks for the questions and the session. So then looking forward to next
Thanks so much for doing the session with us. I just want to remind everybody to do the validation tutorial to get the points for attending all of the sessions today, not just this one. Continue to participate in the Devtoberfest activities, in the grand prize, in the contest. And I appreciate everybody for attending today. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks for having us. Thanks all.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.